"Where did you get pregnant? Go back there," growled the stepmother, glaring menacingly at Thea. Hilary stood in the hallway, hands on her hips, trying to block the corridor with her body. It seemed as though the stepmother had taken a fighting stance, expecting Thea to try to force her way through and break into her former childhood room. Of course, Thea would never do such a thing. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling weak. The journey to the apartment had taken the last of her strength. She leaned against the doorframe, wanting to catch her breath or at least figure out what to do next. December was coming to an end, and with it, the whole year. A year that had brought the inhabitants of the metropolis, and indeed the whole world, both joy and sorrow, love and partings, illnesses and miraculous healings. Thea, a beautiful young woman, looking back, could have called the past year one of the most wonderful in her life. In the snowy fairy tale-like January, she met Ian Keller, and if there is such a thing as love at first sight, then this was surely it. Although sometimes Ian, slyly squinting, would declare that their love had almost sent him to the other world. The thing was, Thea was studying to be a confectioner in culinary school. She was also a volunteer, and when she, as the best student in her course, was offered to participate in a charity evening organised by a local confectionery, she did not refuse. The confectioners at this festival prepared the sweet masterpieces, and the money raised from their sale was sent to orphanages. Ian was brought to this festival by his friend Sam. Sam came to the cafe with his girlfriend Dana, who had been raised in the orphanage. Ian simply wanted to spend the day off with his friends, but the second he saw Thea, he completely forgot about them. The girl, with her grey eyes and a slight blush on her cheeks, looked like a sugar fairy. She had pulled her light brown hair into a high bun, revealing her delicate features. Dressed in a snow-white chef's jacket, biting her lower lip in concentration, Thea was decorating beautiful cupcakes with berries and pieces of chocolate. Ian's feet carried him to her table. He couldn't remember how he managed to eat several cakes just to talk to the wonderful girl, and he completely forgot about his allergy to strawberries. He wouldn't have died from a few berries, but Ian had eaten more than a few. Fortunately, Sam approached the table in time, and seeing his friend's reddening face, raised the alarm. Ian was taken out through the back door so as not to frighten the guests with his swollen face, and was rushed to the hospital to save the hapless Romeo. Later, Ian could not explain why he had not paid attention to the berries, which he had skillfully avoided since childhood. Perhaps it was because he was looking only into the girl's grey eyes, which were like the morning mist or the winter sky. Ian was surprised when the very girl he had been thinking about came to see him in the hospital the next day. Thea, looking embarrassed and even guilty, brought some cakes. "They're strawberry-free," she said, placing the box on the table and tucking a strand of light brown hair behind her ear. "I'm sorry that it turned out this way. I dreamed that people would faint from my desserts, but not literally." "I'm not sorry," Ian blurted out, looking at Thea and feeling his heart constrict under his ribs. "I mean, I didn't dream of spending my weekend on a hospital bed, but it was worth eating strawberries to see you again." Thea laughed briefly, her cheeks flushing again. She shook her head. "Next time, just ask me out on a date. You don't have to risk your life." Ian took her advice. Soon the young couple realized that the concept of kindred spirits was not just an empty phrase. Thea and Ian sincerely felt that they were made for each other. Ian became a ray of light in the darkness that had enveloped Thea. In July, they found out that she was expecting a child from the man she loved. The doctor told the surprised young woman, who was busy graduating from culinary school and dealing with other problems, that the baby under her heart was already more than 2 months old. The pregnancy had been almost imperceptible. Was Thea afraid to tell Ian? No, she was not afraid. However, her excitement made her heart beat faster. After all, Ian's parents did not like her, which complicated the situation. Rather, it was Mrs. Keller who could not stand her, while Mr. Keller treated her with calm indifference. The man was much more interested in work processes than in who his heir was dating. However, Ian was overjoyed when he heard the news. He hugged Thea, wanting to spin her around, but then stopped, afraid of hurting her. "How I love you, Thea," he exclaimed, kissing her face. Thea cried with happiness, offering her cheeks, forehead, and chin for his kisses, looking into his brown eyes and asking, "Are you sure everything will be okay? After all, you're just finishing university, and I'm finishing my school." "I am sure that I love you more than life itself. I am sure that I want to have children with you, and if God willed that the child should come now, then so be it. Don't worry about anything. I will take care of you both." After graduating from university, Ian started working at his father's architectural firm, which he was destined to head one day. And Thea, having finished her studies at culinary school, got a job at a good confectionery. For now, she was just gaining experience, but she dreamed of opening her own little place with sweet pastries one day. In July, Ian, as a birthday present, took his girlfriend to France to admire the Eiffel Tower or stroll through the Louvre. However, in reality, Ian did it so that his sweet-toothed girlfriend could try the very desserts she had dreamed of: meringue, tarte tatin, parfait, soufflé and eclairs. Once Thea could not even dream of this. To stroll along French streets, lavender fields of Provence, or Disneyland, Paris, stuffing herself with croissants and beignets, and holding the hand of her beloved. The trip seemed like a sweet dream. In the last day, when they were sitting in a charming cafe, Ian, blushing deeply, took a small box out of his pocket and proposed to her. He confessed that he had been waiting for the right moment. He thought, like everyone else, of going down on one knee beneath the famous tower, but realized that it was not their place. But here, in this cosy cafe, where French music played softly, and the air was filled with the aromas of coffee, vanilla and sugar, the moment had come. Thea said yes, and gently kissed Ian. They decided to have the wedding a year later, in the summer, when Thea would have already given birth to their child. Neither Thea nor Ian were in any hurry, sincerely believing that they had a long and happy life ahead of them. In August, the groom and bride found out that they were expecting a daughter. Ian, pressing the back of his fiancée's hand to his lips, confidently declared, "I knew it. With a sweet tooth like yours, you could only have a sweet marshmallow princess." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Ian's parents, though they still disapproved of their son's choice, did nothing drastic. Thea and Ian began living together in a cosy, bright apartment. Thea chose furniture for the nursery, bought toys and lovely dresses. She awaited the meeting with their daughter. Sometimes she would wake up in the morning because the little one was kicking inside her belly, as if eager to meet her mum and dad. Ian would be snoring nearby. The dawn sun would peek at them from behind the curtains. In such moments, Thea would freeze, afraid to even breathe too heavily and scare away the happiness that had nestled in her chest. She couldn't help but wonder if she truly deserved such happiness. One quickly gets used to the good. Happiness no longer seemed fragile to Thea. She believed that all of this was forever. However, then December came. The grey, gloomy sky seemed to hang low over the city, breathing moisture and cold onto it. There was no snow. It rained, and the winds howled. At night they moaned, knocking on the windows of the city's residents, begging, demanding to be let in. The temperature dropped, turning the metropolis's roads into icy traps. In December, Thea entered her 9th month of pregnancy. The future parents argued about what to name their child. Ian insisted on the name Eileen, while Thea liked the name Molly. They also wondered in which year the baby would be born. The doctors, playing the role of fortune-tellers, predicted the due date to be January the 7th. Or perhaps the little one would decide to make a more spectacular entrance on the 31st. "I don't want to give birth on New Year's," Thea worried. "I've heard the doctors don't want to deliver babies on holidays. Plus, I don't want to spend the holiday alone in the hospital. I want mandarins, a Christmas tree, and even the fireworks." "You will never be alone again. I will be by your side. I will even sing to you myself," Ian promised, somewhat calming his fiancée. However, Ian could not keep his promise. One December night, when the wind was particularly fierce and large raindrops pounded against the window, Thea felt unwell. Her stomach ached terribly, and she felt a pulling sensation. The woman was genuinely frightened, though Ian looked even more alarmed. "Don't panic!" The man jumped to his feet, first grabbing his dark hair and then the pre-packed bag. "I'll take you to the hospital now." The car drove along the slippery road, the wipers diligently working to clear the windshield of the persistent raindrops. Ian gripped the steering wheel tightly, peering into the night's darkness. "You know, it's probably a false alarm," Thea mumbled, feeling drowsy from the ride. "I think I'm feeling better. Maybe it was just false contractions. I don't know." "Really?" Ian asked with a smile, turning to his sleepy spouse. "Good, but I'll still take you to see the doctor." Ian didn't get to finish. Thea didn't understand what had happened. Ian shouted something, perhaps her name, but she wasn't sure. The woman opened her eyes, her drowsiness giving way to fear, but it didn't have time to penetrate her soul. Impact. The world spins around. Darkness. Thea regained consciousness in the hospital. Seeing the walls of the ward, she fearfully jumped up, nearly tearing the IV catheter from her arm. "Easy, Mummy," the doctor restrained her. Thea didn't hear him. She was examining her large belly, feeling it with her hands. Noticing her state, the doctor hurried to reassure the patient. "The baby is fine, and so are you. Consider it a New Year's miracle. You don't even have a scratch from the accident." "Thank God the baby is okay," she exhaled, falling back onto the pillows, stroking her belly. However, Thea's relief was short-lived. She gasped again, clutching the sleeve of the doctor's coat. "And Ian? Ian, what happened to him? What happened? You said there was an accident." The doctor looked away, and a chill ran down Thea's spine. "In your condition, you shouldn't be worried right now. We can discuss everything later." "No," Thea demanded. "I want to know. Believe me, the uncertainty scares me much more." The doctor looked at her, appraising, then sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. Thea couldn't help but think, looking at his wrinkled face, that he was a good man. "First, calm down. The driver of the car is currently in the intensive care unit. The best doctors are taking care of him," he stated. "The road was icy, there were already many accidents, and then the driver of a truck fell asleep at the wheel and drove into the oncoming lane." "But how?" Thea shook her head, looking at her trembling but perfectly clean hands. There wasn't a scratch on her, as the doctor had said. No bruise, no contusion. The girl sighed, gently smiling. "I think it's because your fiancé made that choice." "What do you mean?" Thea sobbed. Tears were already falling from her grey eyes, rolling down her cheeks, but she didn't even try to wipe them away. It was futile. More tears would take their place. "I think you know that in moments of danger people act instinctively," the doctor explained. "An accident is no exception. In an accident, the driver turns the wheel to the left at the last moment, saving himself from the impact and exposing the right side of the car. However, your fiancé in those few seconds managed to consider his choice and turned the wheel the other way. I don't know if it was conscious or intuitive, but he clearly wanted to save you and your child, even if it meant sacrificing himself, taking the impact." The doctor paused, as if expecting Thea to ask more questions, but none came. All possible words were stuck in Thea's throat. The doctor, rising, added, "I told you the truth so that you know how important your life is to this young man. Therefore, I hope for your cooperation, and that you will follow all the treatment recommendations. The due date is close. You can't take any risks. Also, I ask you to try not to worry about your fiancé. The doctors will do everything possible. Did you hear me?" Thea nodded, though the doctor's words penetrated her consciousness with difficulty, making their way through thorny, prickly thoughts. "Your fiancé will be fine," the doctor said finally, then left, promising to call the nurse. However, the doctor's predictions did not come true. 4 days later, Thea felt fine and was discharged from the hospital. She returned home, hoping to receive news from Ian soon, but the doctors remained stubbornly silent. That same evening, Ian's enraged mother burst into their apartment. "You!" she screamed. "It's all your fault, you wretch! You stray with no pedigree! You latched onto my boy, found yourself a place in the sun. You were with him for the money, weren't you? For the benefit? And he trusted you! And now he's gone!" Thea paled, a chill running through her. The woman's words slapped her, took her breath away. How can he be gone?" she stammered. "Just like that. They didn't save my boy," Mrs. Keller hissed in anger. "And he was saving you, you fool. And he was taking you somewhere in the middle of the night, in such bad weather. It's all your fault. You got what you wanted, you viper. He warmed a snake to his chest. Listen, I don't want you near our family, and we don't want your spawn, understand? Don't even hope to acknowledge him, or our grandchild, and get a crumb of the inheritance. Pack your things from my son's apartment, and then get out." She cursed Thea for a long time, but the venomous words did not wound the woman. In her mind there was only one thought. Ian was gone. When are the funerals?" Thea asked, barely able to speak, her legs trembling. "You think we'll invite you? Don't you have any shame? You are a curse on our family. Get out of here, now. I don't want to find a single thing of yours here. Understand?" Mrs. Keller was cruel, but it couldn't be said that her reaction surprised Thea much. The woman had never taken his son's bride seriously and sincerely believed that Ian would come to his senses after playing around with this simple girl. She thought he would settle down and return to the family fold. The fact was, the Kellers were quite wealthy and even respected in certain circles. Mr. Keller was an architect, and his wife had once acted in the theatre. Naturally, Mrs. Keller dreamed of a wonderful daughter-in-law with excellent manners and a pedigree like a thoroughbred horse. In her fantasies, Ian's wife wore elegant dresses, drank Earl Grey with her on the terrace at the appointed time, and discussed new theatre productions. To be honest, Mrs. Keller had long ago found a suitable candidate for the role of the next Keller. The girl's name was Christine, and she was the daughter of a jeweller. Moreover, the girl and Ian had known each other since childhood and got along very well. Christine's mother had even whispered to Mrs. Keller that her daughter was madly in love with Ian. Christine studied abroad, returning home only in the summer. That summer, when Thea and Ian were strolling through Paris, Christine returned home and heard the news from her mother. She rushed to Mrs. Keller, crying on her knees. Mrs. Keller comforted the poor girl, assuring her that Ian would come to his senses. But he returned from his trip not with a girlfriend, but with a fiancé, and even said that she was expecting his child. When his mother reproached him and mentioned that he had upset Christine, Ian was genuinely surprised. "Christine is like a sister to me. I've never even held her hand. What kind of relationship could we have? There's no need to confuse your fantasies with reality." Then Ian's father intervened in the argument and told his wife to calm down. "He's an adult, he knows what he's doing. And what do you want? For him to abandon a pregnant woman? Would that be a manly thing to do?" The man shook his head. Mrs. Keller felt her blood pressure rise and her life crumble. Her son's actions, as well as her husband's betrayal, felt like a stab in the back. However, there was nowhere to go. Ian was her only son and heir. But now the terrible accident happened, turning everything upside down, both in the lives of the Kellers and in the life of Thea, who had not yet become part of their family tree. Mrs. Keller left, giving Thea a deadline to pack, and the poor woman obediently started gathering her things. Her hands and feet moved mechanically, as if she had turned into a robot devoid of feelings, programmed to leave the apartment. But as she stepped out into the rainy and dark December evening, Thea realized she had nowhere to go. There were only a few days left until New Year's. All her friends and acquaintances were surely busy. Some had gone away to celebrate. Others were hosting guests in their homes. There was no place for her there, and she didn't want to bring her burden of sorrows into someone else's home. Thea decided to take a desperate step. She called her stepmother. However, Hilary's phone was unavailable. Then Thea boarded a bus and rode to the final stop, to the place where, amidst the grey and gloomy high-rises, she had spent her childhood. Thea did not expect a warm welcome. However, she still hoped that her stepmother might have a spark of conscience and let her stepdaughter into the apartment bought by her late father, at least until the baby was born. Alas, no miracle occurred. "Can't you hear me? Your belly's grown, but your ears have failed. Get out of here!" Hilary fumed. "Hilary," Thea said, lowering her gaze, "please understand, I have nowhere to go. I'm due to give birth any day now, and this apartment belonged to my dad. I grew up here." Thea's trembling hands instinctively rested on her large belly, as if wanting to protect the one hidden within. "So what? Prove that the apartment is yours. Legally, everything here is mine," the stepmother snarled even more fiercely. "Besides, there's no place for you here. Understand? I got married. We live here with Marcus and his son from the first marriage. He is using your room. You wouldn't want to live with him, would you?" Thea licked her dry lips. She glanced at the old mirror hanging in the hallway. Once, a small table stood beneath it, holding a home telephone with a dial. Back then, everything was good. Her mum and dad were alive. They loved their daughter and cared for her. In winter they went sledding, and in summer they visited Grandma in the village. Thea remembered when her mother passed away. Her father tried to be a good father. He cared for Thea as best he could, but he was struggling. Grieving for his lost wife, whom he loved dearly, the man began to seek solace in the bottom of a bottle, more and more often. They stopped sledding in the winter, and in the summer they no longer visited the village, as her father was ashamed to face his mother-in-law. It got to the point where he drank even at work, coming home on autopilot, collapsing right at the doorstep. She loved him nonetheless, sincerely and deeply. She would take off his dirty boots and help him to the sofa. She would cover him with a blanket. Having become independent at a young age, Thea cooked porridge and soups for him, boiled pasta, generously pouring ketchup over it. The man also loved his daughter. Sometimes he would even cry, ask for her forgiveness, and hug her. He promised he would change, quit drinking. Thea believed him. Sometimes he would sober up, but it never lasted long. And then Hilary appeared. She quickly charmed Thea's father, fed him some home-cooked meals, and promised to take care of his daughter. But with every hearty dinner, she placed a shot glass next to his plate. Sometimes she joined him. Within a year, they were married. Hilary did everything to ensure her husband remained in a perpetual state of intoxication. Then She persuaded the man to transfer the property to her, and then he was gone, a blood clot. The neighbour said he drank himself to death. By that time, even Grandma Brenda was gone, and the stepmother kicked her stepdaughter out of the apartment as soon as she turned 18, though Thea herself did not want to stay near that woman. Thea had long known how to earn a living, and the culinary school provided her with a room in the dormitory. But fate forced her to return to the doorstep of what was once her home, though the mirror still bore the faded sticker from a piece of gum that Thea had stuck there at 6 years old. Though the old wallpaper in the hallway was adorned with random letters she had scrawled with a blue pen when she first learned to write, and even though her bedroom door frame bore the notches where her dad marked her height, this apartment was no longer her home. Everything here was strange, because a home is not just walls. A home is the people who love you. Thea had no such people left. "I'll go," Thea nodded. "Go on, get out of here," her stepmother grumbled, waving her hands and rushing the guest. "Marcus will be back soon with his son from training, and here you are. What will I tell them? They haven't even heard of you." Thea left, the door slammed shut behind her. The young woman stood still for a moment, deciding what to do. She automatically walked to the stairs, descended a few steps, and then the door swung open again. "Stop!" Her grandmother's voice struck Thea in the back. A faint glimmer of hope to reignite in Thea's chest. Maybe the stepmother would change her mind, at least let her spend the night in the apartment. But the stepmother, grunting, dragged an old sports bag onto the landing. One of its handles was torn and crudely mended with woolen thread. Thea knew this because she had done the repair herself. Her father used to take this bag on his business trips. "Here, we started renovating your old room. I was going to take it all to the dump, but I never got around to it. So the bag's been lying on the balcony. Since you're here, take your stuff." After this tirade, the woman turned sharply and rushed back into the apartment. Thea stared blankly at the bag. She felt as though all her emotions had been drained. Nothing remained. Yet she still bent down, unzipped the bag to see what was inside. The stepmother had crammed in everything she could find: a school notebook, a frog statuette, a small wooden box. Thea picked it up, trying to remember what she had kept inside. Her heart ached. Inside lay a photograph of her mother, taken for her passport, and a key. And then a jolt of realization struck Thea. Her hand grew sweaty. She stared at the key as if it were the magical key that would open a secret door. She did have a place to go after all. Her grandmother's house. Small, just one story and dilapidated, it stood beyond the city limits in the village. Thea remembered telling her fiancé about the village, insisting that she would take him there one day. "You showed me Paris, and I'll show you my village," she had giggled. "I was there as a child when my mum was still alive. After that, Dad never went there, not even once. When Grandma Brenda passed away, I inherited the house and the land." "So you're a rich heiress," Ian had laughed in response. Thea had scoffed. "Oh, yes, I own a plot of land in the middle of nowhere with no internet, where people still heal with plantain, and maybe summon rain with a drum. That's how I remember my village from my childhood." However, now that Thea needed a roof over her head, she felt as though her guardian angel, or perhaps her grandmother herself, had placed the key to her house in her hand. Thea struggled to reach her grandmother's house. At the bus station, she got on a regional bus and finally had to spend a considerable sum on a taxi. The road to the village was snowed in. In this backwater, snowplows did not clear the way for residents in the mornings. In the village, a winter fairy tale reigned. The sky was full of bright stars. Thea's feet sank into the snowdrifts, which sparkled like silver under the moon. The small houses looked like gingerbread houses, their roofs adorned with white icing. Soft light glowed in some windows, smoke rose from the chimneys. Thea took a deep breath, the air so clean and sweet that she wanted to breathe it in fully. She smiled, but then tears welled up in her eyes again. She had hoped that after so many years of absence, she would return to her grandmother's house with Ian and their daughter. But now Ian was gone. At least she would have Eileen, and for her, she had to try. The taxi driver refused to drive her through the narrow streets, so the pregnant woman had to make her own way, dragging her bags through the snow. Her feet sank into the crunchy snowdrifts. Large, fluffy snowflakes fell from the sky, melting on the young woman's face. Despite the cold, by the time Thea reached the right gate, she was breathing heavily and sweating under her coat, but she attributed it to the physical exertion. Phew! She exhaled, stopping and looking at the house. Grandma's house, if Thea was not mistaken in the darkness, did not look very welcoming. It looked at the girl with dark windows as if reproaching her for her long absence. Grandma Brenda had bad legs. Thea couldn't remember why, but her grandmother limped and couldn't walk for long. However, her hands were golden. With these hands she often hugged Thea. She braided her long light brown hair into pigtails and always sang beautiful old songs while doing so. She baked pies with homemade jam and cabbage, treated her granddaughter to sugar candies on a stick, and dried apples, which she kept in a cloth bag. She knitted socks, scarves, and mittens for her. Before bed, the old woman told her granddaughter fairy tales about mermaids and forest spirits, which seemed a bit scary, but very interesting to the girl. And she took her to visit her friends. Thea loved these gatherings. The grandmothers and her elderly friends drank homemade liquor, giggled like girls, sang songs and gossiped. Yes, Grandma spoiled and loved Thea in her childhood, and before her death she did not forget her granddaughter, leaving her the little house as an inheritance. And she, ungrateful, called her once a month, promised to come but never did. It was shameful, painful. It just seemed to her that then her grandmother would live forever, and when she was gone, Thea saw no point in coming to the village. It was painful to live in a house where there was no loved one, and now she had to enter it for the first time since her grandmother's funeral. Thea, sighing as if diving into a pond with icy water, walked through the gate and then opened the door to her grandmother's house. Inside, it was dark, damp and cold. The moonlight barely illuminated the rooms. Spiders had long settled in the corners, and dust lay on the tables instead of tablecloths. Thea, without much hope, flicked the light switch. There was no electricity. No one had paid the bill. Thea turned on the flashlight on her phone and looked around. She noticed her grandmother's baskets piled in a corner. She picked up an overturned stool. Well, never mind, Thea said to herself with forced cheer. I have hands, so everything will be fine. The main thing is that I'm not out on the street for New Year's. Thea worried a bit, thinking about the uncertain future. What would the neighbours say? A city girl had shown up, pregnant, and where would she find doctors in the village? Would the ambulance arrive in time if she went into labour? And, as if in response to her anxious thoughts, Thea felt her water break. The woman first blushed, then turned pale. Thea grabbed her phone, her trembling hands dialing the emergency number, but there was no signal. Not only was the village far away, but the weather also dictated its conditions. No, please not this, Thea stammered, vainly trying to call somewhere. Come on, you useless piece of plastic. In response to her words, the smartphone, as if offended by the insult to its person, flickered once and turned off. In the cold and working as a flashlight, its battery drained much faster. Damn it! Thea gasped, tossing the phone aside. Not knowing what to do, she rushed to the neighbours. Thea didn't really remember who lived there, but panic nipped at her heels. Mrs. and Mr. MacDonald were already getting ready for bed when someone started pounding on their door with their fists. The elderly woman, rolling out of bed with the agility of a sprinter, grabbed the poker. "Who's there?" the old man barked, and thinking, added belligerently, "I have a gun." "Forgive me. My name is Thea. I am Brenda's daughter. She used to live next door to you. Please help me." While Mr. MacDonald was still trying to understand if he was dreaming, Mrs. MacDonald, dropping the poker, hurried to open the door. "Good heavens! Could it be? Thea, it is you! But what's wrong with you?" the elderly woman exclaimed, leading Thea to a couch. "Ben, what are you standing there like a stump for? Help! Her legs won't hold her. Oh, dear Lord. Are you by any chance in labour?" Thea nodded and then murmured, "It's too early. I wasn't supposed to be due yet." She took a deep breath and continued, "I need a doctor. A phone to call an ambulance. Something." The elderly woman, looking at the suffering girl, clicked her tongue. "We'll call right away, but even if we do get through, the doctors won't make it here in time. A blizzard is starting and our doctor is away. We'll do it like this." She turned to her husband, who was putting on warm pants. "Ben, go clean the guest room, then gather the neighbours. Maybe someone can help. Bring Jane too, and definitely bring Zoe. She used to be a midwife." Then everything became a blur for Thea, a kaleidoscope of events and faces. She felt sick and in pain, but then it would ease again. Thea felt as if she were floating, sometimes sinking, sometimes surfacing. Mrs. MacDonald talked to her, not letting her lose consciousness. "Don't be afraid of anything, dear. We'll help you. Our girls will pray for you too. Zoe will be here soon. She has helped many a baby into the world," Grandma continued to mutter. "And Jane will be here too. She's a veterinarian, by the grace of God." "A veterinarian? But I'm not a goat," Thea bleated, now uncertain of anything. Soon the midwife Zoe arrived with an incredibly kind face, and Jane, the veterinarian, with a very pale face. It was clear that she would also prefer to meet a pregnant goat rather than Thea, but she had to help. The two old women and one younger woman bustled around Thea, encouraging her as if she were their own. They told her when and how to push, and Mrs. MacDonald wiped the labouring woman's forehead with a wet towel, assuring her that it wouldn't be much longer. "Everything is fine," she said. "Just a little bit more, and you'll hold your baby." Zoe also praised Thea, but in her own way. "You have good hips. It's going smoothly. You're breathing right. Good job," the old woman said matter-of-factly. "The baby is coming along well. Don't worry." A minute later, or maybe half an hour, or maybe even an hour, Thea had no idea how much time had passed. She felt relief and heard a baby's cry. "A girl! A beauty!" Zoe proclaimed, very pleased with herself. "What a voice! Strong and healthy." "What will you name her?" Mrs. MacDonald asked, handing the mother her baby and admiring her. "Eileen," Thea replied without hesitation. "That's what her father wanted." The birth of the little one was celebrated by the entire awakened and alarmed village. Mr. MacDonald, in his joy, had a bit too much to drink, but his wife did not scold him. The occasion was worthy. "Don't even think about going back to your shack until we fix it up. You'll catch your death in there, both you and the baby," the elderly woman told her guest. "What do you mean, fix it up?" the woman asked in amazement. "Well, how could we not? I don't know why you came back to the village in the middle of winter and night. If you'd like to, you'll tell us yourself. I won't pry. But I doubt you ran away from a good life," the perceptive old woman declared. "So we'll help you however we can." Thea almost burst into tears then. It was only at that moment that she realized she had come to the village, to strangers. Yet Some knew her grandmother. Many had seen Thea herself a long time ago, but they owed her nothing. And they had saved her and her daughter, and they continued to help, even though she hadn't asked. "Thank you," Thea sobbed. "No need to cry. Your milk will be spoiled," the old woman joked, and then added, "Do you still love jam-filled pastries? I'll make some for you, dear." "Why did you help me?" Thea couldn't hold back. "Why did all of you—" Grandma was surprised. "What? Are we some kind of beasts? And besides, do you think that no one in our village would help Brenda's granddaughter? After what she did for us?" Mrs. MacDonald shook her head. "How could I face Brenda in heaven if I didn't help?" "What did Grandma do?" Thea asked in amazement. "Your grandmother had a bad leg, right? She injured it saving my grandson. That day it suddenly darkened and the wind started. I ran after my grandson but couldn't find him. Your grandmother also started looking for my Max, and she found him first. Max was playing with the kids under the trees near the forest. Brenda saw how one of the trees was dangerously swaying right over them. Some fool had cut it down but hadn't finished the job. She managed to chase the kids away from the dangerous spot, but she couldn't get away herself. At the last moment, when the tree was already falling on them, she pushed Max away, but she fell. That's how she got her leg injury." In the morning, the paramedics finally made it to the village and checked on Thea and the baby. It turned out that both of them were doing great. Of course, Thea was offered to go to the hospital, but she refused. The worst was over, and there was no need to be in the maternity ward on New Year's. There was a bustle in Grandma Brenda's house. Men brought firewood and heated the stove to warm the house after years of neglect. The women cleaned the dust and cobwebs, spread fresh sheets. When Thea returned to the house, she did not recognize it. It was not just the cleanliness, but the fact that the villagers had taken care of everything, even the things for little Eileen. "Where did all this come from?" Thea asked in amazement. "Well, this," Mrs. MacDonald waved her hand. "This cradle, we took it from the attic. It's old, but we painted it and it looks like new, right? The baby clothes and diapers are left over from Zoe's grandchildren. Various toys? Look, there are even some very old ones, like from my childhood. And we also brought you some dishes, food. We set up a Christmas tree and decorated it. After all, New Year's is coming soon. Eileen's first New Year. What's a home without a Christmas tree?" Thea celebrated the New Year not alone. She was with her little daughter, who had her father's chin with a dimple and dark hair. And beside her were people who had become close to her in such a short time. When it was almost midnight, Mr. MacDonald took a bottle of champagne, and his wife squinted fearfully, worried that the cork would hit her in the eye. "Have you thought of a wish to make?" Mrs. MacDonald asked Thea. Thea shook her head. "I don't have any wishes, or rather, I don't believe they come true," Thea confessed, remembering how she once wished for her mother to get better, and then asked for her father to stop drinking. "But what if this one comes true?" Mrs. MacDonald winked. "And one glass won't hurt you or Eileen. Maybe it will even help you sleep better." Thea just smiled and shook her head, but she did not argue. The first strike of the clock tower sounded on the TV. Mr. MacDonald chuckled, filling the glasses of his wife and guest with sparkling wine. The foam bubbled over, spilling onto Thea's fingers. The woman laughed. "Make a wish," Mrs. MacDonald demanded. I want my relatives to visit me more often. They moved to their city and don't show their faces here." Mrs. MacDonald downed her glass in one gulp. She missed her grandchildren and great-grandchildren very much. "And I want a new boat, for fishing later." Mr. MacDonald sighed dreamily, but under his wife's stern gaze he added, "And let the great-grandchildren come. I would take them for a ride on this boat on the lake." Another glass disappeared, promising happiness in the new year. There were only a few strikes left. The old couple looked at Thea expectantly. "Oh, well, I want—" Thea saw Ian's smiling face before her eyes, but she still said through the piercing pain in her heart, "I just want Eileen and I to be happy in the new year." Bubbles from the drink tickled her nose. Thea snorted with laughter, finishing her glass with the last strike of the clock. Later, they ate salads. Mr. MacDonald played the accordion, and Eileen snored in her crib, indifferent to the holidays. And when Thea fell asleep, hugging her daughter, she felt hope in her heart that maybe, some day, her wish would come true. In the new year, Thea's life flowed calmly and well. Caring for her daughter did not allow her to fall into sadness, longing or despair. Yes, she often thought about Ian, but she kept a smile on her face because she had someone to live for. Over time, Thea became more and more enchanted with the rural life. Yes, maybe the toilet was outside, and the neighbour's rooster, Cardinal, seemed to have lost both his sense of time and conscience, starting to crow under the windows at 3 a.m, as if begging to be put in a soup. But all this was made up for by the clean air that her newborn baby breathed. This was something that could not be bought for any amount of money. Thea was surrounded not by shop signs or billboards, but by pine and birch trees. There was less noise, fewer cars, fewer queues. Life flowed at a leisurely pace, and this was precisely what a mother on maternity leave could dream of. But most of all, Thea was amazed by the atmosphere of kindness and coziness that the residents had created for her and her daughter. Mr. MacDonald and Mrs. MacDonald visited them often, helped with the household chores, gave valuable advice, and simply did not let the neighbours feel lonely. Other villagers also often visited Thea, rarely coming empty-handed. They brought her homemade eggs, cottage cheese and milk. They shared pies. They brought books from the library. And the whole village loved to take care of the baby. People almost lined up to rock Eileen in their arms. "We'll spoil her so much, she'll go from one pair of arms to another," Thea laughed. "Well, let her. We haven't had such a little one in the village for a long time, so we're happy," Mrs. MacDonald smiled in response. A month later, wanting to repay the villagers for their care, Thea rolled up her sleeves, hid her hair in a bun, and prepared wonderful desserts. And since then, Thea has been baking cakes for the birthdays of the local elderly, becoming their main pastry chef. She even taught them how to make wonderful cream flowers and patterns, showing them how to work with chocolate or fondant. They considered Thea a magician, but the woman knew that the villagers had done much more magical things for her. They had become her family. Summer came. Strawberries appeared in the gardens. Bright and juicy, they beckoned Thea to culinary feats. But she kept thinking about Ian, the person with whom she was connected by a strawberry cupcake. Thea hesitated to start working for a long time. And then, as if something drew her to the table, she kneaded the dough in the morning, baked strawberry cupcakes in her new oven, and gave them to her neighbours. Thea was expecting Mrs. and Mr. MacDonald for lunch. Mrs. MacDonald arrived on time, but Mr. MacDonald was delayed in the forest. "He went for mushrooms, although he's been wandering for a long time," his wife explained, entering the house and immediately picking up Eileen, whom she already considered her granddaughter. However, Mr. MacDonald returned, not with chanterelles or porcini mushrooms, but with an unexpected guest. Thea heard astonished voices in the hallway, but she was still busy in the kitchen working on the soup. "Good heavens, who is this with you? Is he drunk or something?" Mrs. MacDonald asked her husband. "No, he's sober. I just—" "What did you do to him? You didn't hit him, did you?" his wife asked, even more frightened. From her voice, it was not clear whether she was planning to call the police or hide her husband in the cellar with the potatoes. "Oh, come on, he's alive. You won't believe it. I found him in the forest. He got lost. The young man. He was looking for our local cemetery. I asked him to sit down and rest with me. No one will run away from you from the cemetery. Those who need to wait will, right? And he was reluctant at first, hurried. Then I gave him the cupcake that Thea gave me, and he took a bite, turned red, turned pale. He said he had a bad allergy to strawberries, but he really took only a small bite. So I took him by the shoulders and brought him here. And he's like in a daze, asking where I got the cupcake. He said he only ate such cupcakes once in his life. Thea, feeling a surge of curiosity and a strange pang in her side, wiped her hands on a towel and stepped out of the kitchen. In her living room, the elderly couple had seated a man. Mr. MacDonald was fanning the guest with a newspaper. Thea looked closer, and a frightened cry escaped her throat. The guest, who had just regained consciousness, let out a similar cry. "Thea!" Ian paled. "No, it can't be. You were dead." Ian stood up, gazing into the face of his beloved. He couldn't believe his eyes. Perhaps he had managed to indulge in more than just a cake in the forest. Perhaps he had sampled some mushrooms, and now he was seeing a phantom. Thea shook her head, trying to dispel the illusion. She too couldn't believe her eyes. Yes, Ian was pale, thin, and clearly hadn't had a haircut in a long time. His hair and beard had grown out, but it was him, definitely him. Perhaps her eyes might have deceived her, but her heart was pounding in her chest, reaching out to him. It did not lie. Thea wanted to rush into the man's arms, but she couldn't. Her legs felt like lead. Her head suddenly became heavy, and the world dimmed. She almost fainted, but Ian rushed forward just in time and embraced her. Thea, it can't be," he murmured. He kissed her wet, hot face, pressed her to him. Sometimes he squeezed her shoulders so hard it hurt. But Thea did not complain, slowly coming to her senses. She did not complain about the pain in her heart, or that her hands were shaking, or that her chest was tight with excitement. She could endure it, just to prolong this moment. Like Ian, she feared only one thing, that she was merely dreaming. No, she feared waking up even more. "It's you? Really you?" she whispered, thinking her heart might stop at any moment. Then Eileen, who had been sleeping peacefully in Mrs. MacDonald's arms, woke up and started whimpering. Ian turned his head slowly and saw his daughter. They say men don't cry, but the sight of the little girl was the final straw. A tear slid down Ian's cheek, getting lost in his beard. Yes, this is our daughter. Her name is Eileen, just as you wanted," Thea whispered. Ian swallowed hard. He kissed Thea's forehead, then stood up and approached Mrs. MacDonald. With trembling hands, he took the child, pressing her to his chest. The child he had never hoped to see. Eileen immediately calmed down, grabbed her father's beard with her little fingers, and giggled. She was happy to meet him. It is true that the hidden always comes to light. Soon the truth was revealed. It turned out that Ian had survived the accident, but was severely injured. After surgery, he fell into a coma. The young man emerged from it 2 days later, and doctors soon diagnosed him with selective amnesia. He did not remember how he ended up in the hospital. He barely remembered the past year, and with it, Thea. His father took Ian to the capital, where the best doctors cared for him. But Mrs. Keller decided not to miss the opportunity. She sent Christine to her son, instructing her to care for the sick, nurse him back to health, make him fall in love with her. Soon, however, Ian's memory began to return in fragments. At first, he began to dream of a wonderful girl with grey eyes, dressed in a snow-white jacket. He dreamed of Paris, and one day he woke up in a sweat, having seen the accident in his dream. He remembered Thea, that she was carrying his daughter. Then Mrs. Keller told him a pre-prepared story. "Your fiancé and unborn child died in that accident. I have the police and medical reports," she cried, showing him fake documents. "We didn't tell you for your own good, Ian, because we were worried about your health. It was fragile. You were in a coma. Such a shock. You might not have survived it." Ian was horrified. He asked where his fiancé and daughter were buried, but his mother just shrugged. She claimed she had no idea. It wasn't their family, so it wasn't their responsibility to bury them. She also claimed that she had asked not to publish the news of the accident anywhere to avoid attracting attention to their family. Ian was not surprised by the secrecy. His mother had always been that way. Ian rushed to Thea's stepmother, but she drove him away. Mrs. Keller had paid her to keep quiet. The woman hoped that her son, realizing Thea was gone, would come to his senses. She thought he would notice Christine, who was always around him. She believed that Christine, who had appeared so conveniently, could mend his broken heart. But Ian was not interested in Christine. Ian's condition only worsened. Physically, he was healthy, but inside him, a fire seemed to have gone out. He became a recluse, forgot about work and himself. He didn't appear among friends, didn't go online on social networks. Later, his father, worried about his son, offered a solution. He advised Ian to find the grave and, by laying flowers, accept his loss. That's when he started looking for Thea's grave, but it's impossible to find something that doesn't exist. In the summer, he remembered the village and the house that belonged to Thea, and he found out that there was a cemetery nearby. But he decided to take a shortcut, turned the wrong way and got lost in the forest. Fortunately, the hapless traveller hadn't gone far. Mr. MacDonald, who was already hurrying home, found him. In the end, it turned out that in his search for his beloved grave, Ian found her, alive and well. He found her by following the crumbs of a strawberry cake, found her and never intended to let her go again. Ian and Thea got married in the summer, just as they had planned. Nothing could disrupt their plans, not even a fabricated death. The whole village was invited to the wedding, and everyone came. Mr. MacDonald brought his accordion to liven up the celebration, and Mrs. MacDonald personally baked a wedding loaf for the newlyweds. Ian broke off relations with his mother, unable to forgive such a cruel deception. His father again sided with his son. It turned out that the man knew nothing of his wife's scheme. The young family returned to the city in their lives. A couple of years later, Ian took over his father's company. When Eileen grew older, Thea was able to fulfill her dream and open her own pastry shop with wonderful desserts. But for a very long time, every summer, the family returned to the village. Mr. MacDonald took Eileen out on a new boat that Thea had given him, and Mrs. MacDonald cooked dumplings for her. Thea's New Year's wish did come true. She and Eileen were very happy, for they were surrounded by those who loved them.